Hi, this is Karen with Karen's Cards and More. I apologize for being a few minutes late getting started this evening. Had some camera difficulties, so that delayed me getting started, but we're here now. So let's get right into tonight's card. Tonight we're going to do this double Z fold fun fold hydrangea card. This is the last week in our May series, and so this is our last card. I do want to, before we get started, just remind you to check out the announcements. There's a post that gives you the projects for June. So next week we will not have a Facebook Live because it's Memorial Day, so I will not be doing a Facebook Live next Monday night. So you have 2 weeks until our next one, which gives you time to order the stamp set if you want to do the June projects. And let me just show you real quick. We're going to be using the handsomely sweeted stamp set for our June projects. So, and there's a coordinating die set that you can order. We will be using that. If you don't order that, but you place a $50 order in the month of May, I will send you the kits that have the pieces already die cut. So check out the announcement. All the details are there, and if you place the order before the end of the month, if you place it this week, you should have time to get your stamp set before our first Facebook Live in June. So I just wanted to highlight that, bring that to your attention so that you can get in on that should you so choose. So let's talk about tonight's card. We're going to be using the stamp set and dies for the Hydrangea Haven, and specifically we're going to be using a lot of the stamps from here, so we'll talk about those as we go. And then for the dies, we're using the little flowers and then the main hydrangea flower there. So those are going to be the dies that we use tonight. If you got the card kits from me, then those were already die cut for you, so you don't have to worry about doing the die cutting. That will be done for you. So let's talk about the paper. Our card base is Highland Heather, and it's 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. You're going to need a piece of basic white that is 4.5 by 7.5, and we're going to do the scoring together on this. You're going to need a scrap piece of the white to do the hydrangea and to die cut it. And then you're going to need 2 pieces of the designer series paper, and one is 5 1/4 by 4, and the other is 5 1/4 by 1 7/8. And those are going to be the mats for the card. So let's get started. Let's start with our basic white piece, and let's do the scoring that we're going to do on this. So I'm going to get out my score tool here, and we're going to score it at 3 1/4. And I'm going to, let me see if I can move this up so you can, maybe I'll just turn it the other way, see if I can get it on camera. Either way I go, it's not putting that on camera. Let me see if I can go up this way. That'll do it. Okay. So we're going to score this piece on the long side, and we're going to score it at 5 3/8. And if you have the Stampin' Up! Trimmer, it's the lighter of the 2 blades. That's your score one. So you're just going to score it at 5 3/8. And you're going to score it at 3 1/4. So let me back this up to 3 1/4. And this might be off camera just for long enough for me to score that, but you can be scoring along with me. So 3 1/4 and 5 3/8. So I'm just going to get this scored here, and then I'm going to get the trimmer out of the way. Okay, so that gives us our 2 scores. And what's going to happen to make the Z fold, we're going to be folding along these 2 lines, but we want to go ahead and do our stamping while it's flat. It's going to be much easier if we do the stamping now than if we try to do a bunch of folding and then do the stamping. So let's work on the stamping. So on the far right panel, let me bring back the finished card. We're going to be putting some leaves. We're going to put a sentiment. We're going to do a little splatter technique. And on the middle section, we're going to be doing some light stamping. We're going to do this, I call it a brush stroke, and we're going to do a sentiment. So let's start with that. Let's start with our leaves. I tell you what, let's start with our sentiment on this because we can work around the sentiment once we get that. So we're going to use the sentiment that says, "You are capable of amazing things," and we're doing this in memento. So let me get my memento pad. And I'm putting this in the lower, I guess you would say the lower third. Let me bring this in so you can see it. I'm just inking it up. Okay. And I'm just going to put it somewhere down in here. And I'm just going to stamp that in there. Okay. And one thing I forgot to do, it stamped okay, but one thing you want to do with the polymer stamps is it's good to keep a piece of foam that you can put underneath. You'll get a better stamped image if you do that. So I'm going to bring this close by, and I'm going to go ahead and clean this stamp so I can use this block again. So let me just clean that real quick so I can take that stamp off, because I'm going to need the block in a moment. So let's work on our leaves, and I'm going to go ahead and put this underneath so we can get a better stamped image. And I'm just going to bring a scrap piece of paper over, because we only want to do the leaves on this rightmost part. So I'm just going to put this scrap up against that fold line, and I'm just going to leave it there. That way, if I stamp on the edge, I'm not getting it on that middle piece. So we're going to come in with the Old Olive. And we're going to use the image that's the 2 leaves. And we're just going to randomly stamp around our sentiment. So there's no exact placement for this, however you want to do it. And I'm going to start over on this edge so that I can move my paper so I can stamp off the edge on the other side. So I'm just going to go through here and stamp. And you want to kind of turn your stamp so all the leaves aren't going the same direction. And since I'm not going to be getting any closer to the fold, I'm going to bring this like this so I can stamp off the other edge without getting it on anything. I'm just going to go through here and just stamp. Okay. I did some sloppy stamping, and I just smudged that. I got ink on my finger, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This is the one thing about doing a live. You don't want to continue, you know, with a video, you can always go back and edit out. With a live, you do not have that ability because, of course, you're live. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut a new piece, and we're just going to start this over again. Okay. Because I've got stuff on the back too. So I'm just going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to bring the trimmer back in, and I'm going to recut this piece, which is 4 1/4 by 7 1/2. So let's cut it 7 1/2. By 4 1/2. Okay. And then I'm going to score it at 3 1/4 and 5 3/8. So let me get caught up to where we were. Okay, now we're caught back up and we can start again. Okay, so let me go back, let me bring in my black Memento ink, and let me go back to our sentiment. We're just going to do this again. We're just going to ink it up. And I'm going to just stamp it on here. Like that. I'm going to go ahead and close that up, and I'm going to bring in my old olive and my leaf, and I'm going to go ahead, since I already have this set up like this, I'm going to go ahead and do my stamping on this side, so that then I can go back and do the other side. And I'm going to bring in my cloth and clean my stamp. I've got some green ink around the outside edges of my stamp, so I want to make sure and get that cleaned off because it'll give me a better stamp. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to do the same thing as before. I'm just going to randomly stamp our leaves. I'm going to try not to be so sloppy this time. And I'm just going to come around and randomly place my leaves. Now, I think I'm going to do one more. Okay, and then I'm going to cover up at the fold line, so I can get some more along the edge without going on the middle piece. So if I just hold that right there along that fold, and then I'm going to come in with, and I'm just going to do the same thing that we were doing. Get my stamp turned around, and I'm just going to add a few more parts to the leaf right on the edges. Okay? You can do as many leaves or as few leaves as you want. It's totally random. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and close my green for the moment. And I'm going to come back with the balmy blue. And we're going to work on the middle section. So the big section on the left has no stamping, so we don't have to worry about that. But we're going to come to this middle panel, and right above halfway is where I'm doing it. You could do it wherever you wanted, but I'm going to come in with this. This is in the stamp set, and it kind of looks like a brush stroke. And I'm using the balmy blue, and I'm going to ink that up. Now I'm doing it full strength. If you wanted it to be a little lighter, you could stamp off once, but I'm going to use it full strength. And I'm just going to come in here. And this pretty much takes up the whole width of this panel. And I'm just going to come in here. And I'm going to stamp that down. like that. And then I'm going to come in with my memento, and I'm going to use my other sentiment, which is to an incredible woman. I'm going to ink that up with the black memento, and I'm going to stamp this in the brushed area. Okay, and we have that done. And then I guess I need my balmy blue again. We're going to come back with the balmy blue, and we're using this little cluster of flowers, but I wanted this to be really, really light. So I'm going to start with my paper at the edge on this fold. I'm going to move my ink pad over here so you can see it. And I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to stamp off and then stamp on my piece, because I wanted this just to be real light, like a background. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you. See, I just wanted a faint color, but you could, and I'm going to mix this so this will have a mixed look. I'm going to go ahead and stamp directly on there so you can see the difference in color. I just wanted that real light look. So that's why I stamped off. And then I want to switch this so that I'm covering up the other side, because I want to get some flowers in on this side. So I'm going to cover up right to the fold, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to ink up, I'm going to stamp off, and I'm going to stamp just like that. Okay, I just wanted a little bit of background color. That's all I was doing with that. Okay, so I'm going to close this up. Well, actually, I'm not going to close that up because we're going to need it. And I'm going to show you what I did for the splatters, or I'm not really sure what you'd want to call it, but I'm going to call it splatters. So the first thing I wanted to do is cover up at that fold. Now, you can either hold it, or you can take some tape, and I'm just going to use some low-tack purple tape. And I'm just going to pull a couple pieces off here. I'm going to line this up. And I'm just going to tape it down to my mat. That way both hands can be free to do the technique that I'm going to do. And I don't have to worry about trying to hold it and do the technique at the same time. So I'm not putting it on my card, but I'm just doing like that to hold it down, okay? And then I'm just going to use a block. And I'm just going to stamp the block in the balmy blue. I just want to get a little bit of ink on the block. And I'm going to go ahead and close up my balmy blue because I'm done with it for this moment. And for this, I'm using an aqua painter, but I'm really not using much water. I don't really want a whole lot of water. I'm just swirling it in this ink, getting this ink on the brush. And then I put my finger here and I just tap like this. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it because it's not, get a little bit more water. I'm just going to get a little water on it because having a little water is going to make it splatter a little bit better, but I don't want a whole lot of water. And for some reason, it's just not splattering good. There we go. And you can do as concentrated of a splatter or as sparse as of a splatter as you want. This is totally up to you, totally as random as you want it to be, as dark as you want it to be. And I'm just, and really, I think everyone you do is going to do the same, a different look, because you might splatter differently every time. If you have the Balmy Blue Stampin' Blends, you can also use those to do this technique. And I'm just adding more because I have a little more concentration down here. So I'm just trying to even it out by adding more in other places. Now we are going to add some die cut flowers at the end to this, but we're not going to do that right now. We're going to give this a chance to dry. So I'm going to take this up and I'm just going to set this piece aside so it can be drying while I do the next step. I'm just going to push that tape around there so it won't get stuck to anything. Now, the next step, if you are doing this with me and you have the die cut set and the stamp set, what you're going to do is you're just going to take a scrap of basic white and you're going to stamp this hydrangea image, the whole flower image. It's kind of an outline image. You're just going to stamp that on your piece of basic white. If you're using your Stamparatus, make sure you put your foam piece in, put your basic white down, hold it with your magnets, and stamp this on this, and then you can die cut it. But the way I'm doing it tonight, and I'm doing this on purpose because I wanted to show, if you got a kit, what you got was the piece already die cut. So you're stamping on a piece that's already die cut. And I wanted to show you, if you are using the Stamparatus to do your stamping, you can still do it on a die cut piece. All I did is I took a piece of that low tack tape and I put it on the back of my die cut and then just pressed it down to the foam. Just like that. Now, if you're using a clear block and just stamping on this without the Stamparatus, you know, you don't have to do this step because you're going to be able to stamp directly on that. But if you want to use your Stamparatus, you can definitely still do that. So I used that low tack tape to hold that down, and I'm just going to line up my stamp. Figure out where I want that to be. And the nice thing about doing it this way is it allows you to line it up exactly where you want it to be, because you can see the white die cut piece underneath and you can tell exactly where it's going to stamp. So then you just close the lid and that's going to pick the stamp up off the die cut. So the die cut's still in place. It's not going to move because you have it taped to that foam, but yet it's not anything permanent that's going to harm your piece. So then I'm going to come in with a black memento. And the nice thing about this is if you stamp it once and it's not dark enough, because you have everything held in one place and you're not going to move it in between, you could always do a second stamping if you wanted to darken it, and it'll stamp right in the exact same place. So I'm going to stamp this down, and I'm just going to, I have a tool that I use to help me add a little bit of pressure, and that's all I'm doing now. And then I'm going to pull that up, and I like that image. I don't want it to be any darker than that, so I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to carefully remove that low tack tape off the back, and that piece is ready to go to the next step. So let me pull this out. And I'm going to bring my little foam piece back in. And I'm just going to put my scrap underneath just because I like stamping on the scrap I don't know why, but I just do. So, and then I'm going to come back with my Balmy Blue. And I'm using this big, it's going to give it a watercolor effect. So I'm going to ink this up. And this part is going to be bigger than your die cut piece. So you just line it up wherever you want it, and you can look through the stamp to see where you want the ink to go. I'm just trying to look at where I think it needs to go. And I think I want it just like this. And then I'm just going to stamp down. Now, this stamp is made so that it's not giving a full image. It's going to look a little darker in some places and lighter in some places. That's the way the stamp is made. So don't feel like you did something wrong, that you didn't stamp it correctly. That's just the way the stamp is made. So don't get too worried about that. Okay, now we want to come in with the olive, Old Olive, and we want to do the leaf portion. So let me open my Old Olive, and I'm going to come in with this, and it's the same type of stamp where it's not meant to look like a solid image. It's supposed to look more watercolor, the more watercolor effect. So I'm going to stamp it up, ink it up. And the reason I showed you how to do this with the Stamparatus if you're working with a die cut is because some of you got the card kits and you may be thinking, well, how do I do this when I have the die cut image already done? So I wanted to make sure to include that in the video tonight so that you're able to follow along and know how you could still accomplish the same thing. So then the tip I would give you when you're stamping this part, line up the stem first and then rotate your leaves however you need them to be. But start with the stem. I'm going to try to keep my head out of the camera. I think that looks good, so I'm just going to press it down there. There we go. So we have that stamping done. So I'm going to go ahead and close my ink pad, and we're done with all stamping. So I'm going to move this stuff out of the way because I don't need it anymore. So we've got our inside panel stamped. We've got our die cut piece stamped. And we've got, I've hid them from myself. Now I know I had the purple pieces and the designer series paper already cut. Isn't that funny? I went and set them out of my way and totally lost where I put them. So I'm just going to rattle on and talk for a moment while I try to, there they are. I knew if I just started talking I'd find them. Okay, so we're going to start with the Highland Heather piece and our 2 pieces of designer series paper. And we're going to go ahead and adhere these. So I'm just going to start with the larger of the 2 mats. And I'm going to come in with my Stampin' Seal. And I'm going to just put adhesive on the back of the designer series paper. And of course, it's going to act up there. If you have that problem where it's not rolling adhesive, just use your thumb and roll it up until you can feel the sticky. And that'll get it going again. And the Stampin' Seal works better. The more, I found for me, the key is to keeping it upright rather than at an angle. For some reason, that works better for me. It makes it run smoother, I think, is to keep it more straight up and down. Okay, so I'm going to come in with this. And I am going to line this up. press that down. And then I am going to, you know, when we scored this, I forgot to tell you an additional score. We scored it at 4 1/4, but I forgot to score it at 2 1/8. So I'm just going to go back and do that right now. So I'm going to put this in. I'm actually going to turn it this way because we need to score this side in half. So I'm going to go at 2 1/8. And I'm just going to score that. Okay. And then we're going to take this small piece of designer series paper and we're going to put it on the far left flap. Now you could cut an additional, you would need another one just the same size, and you could put it in the middle here. But I felt like when the card's finished, you're not really going to see that. So I didn't put a piece there. You could definitely do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put adhesive on this piece. Can I believe May is almost over? It's been a crazy month. Okay, so again, I'm just going to line this up, trying to look and make sure my borders are even, and that's a little off. So before I press down, if you don't press it down, you can pull it up. It's a lot harder once you press down on it. So I'm going to try to lift it up, and sometimes it's easier to turn it this way and line up the long side versus the shorter side. So I'm going to do that. And I like that better. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and fold these. So you want to fold it in half, just like you would your normal card base. And I'm going to bring in my bone folder and just give that a crease. And then we want to fold the other half backwards. And that gives you part of your Z fold. If you look at it like this, it's a Z. So that gives you part of your Z fold. Now we need to come in with our white part, and we're going to be adding that. So we're going to start by doing the same thing. We want to get our folds. So the right panel, fold in. And then I'm going to just flip it over and then fold the bigger piece backwards. And that gives us our inside Z. See the Z? Now that looks plain, but remember, we've got this flower that we're going to be putting on the front. So I want to go ahead and put this flower on before I attach this piece. So I'm just using dimensionals. So I'm just going to turn this over and bring in my dimensionals. I'm going to get my take your pick tool. And I'm just going to put some dimensionals on the back of the die cut piece. Okay. And then I'm just going to remove the backing. Okay. And then I'm just going to Now you could put this however you want on this front piece. You could put it more straight up and down. You can put it at an angle, however you want to put it. And I'm just going to put mine like that. And there's a few more things we're going to do to the front, but I'm going to go ahead and finish putting the card together. We have a bow and some rhinestones to put on, but I'm going to go ahead and put the card together before we do that. Okay, so the next step, we've got to get this attached and we've got to get this attached. Okay, we are not going to put any adhesive on the middle section. We're only adhering the right hand piece and the left side of the larger section. So let's start with this far right piece that we have the leaves stamped on, and I'm going to turn it over and I'm just going to apply some adhesive to it. Okay, and I'm going to turn this way. And I'm going to center this horizontally, and I'm going to leave, I mean, you can guesstimate how much you want to leave. I'm going to guess that's probably maybe 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to press that down. Okay? And then I'm going to fold that back. And if you think about it, if you close the front, you can see we only need to attach part of it, right? We don't want to attach it. If you put adhesive on this whole piece and then close it, you're going to be adhering it onto itself. So we just want to put adhesive on this side. You could put it on this piece or you could put it on this piece. I'm just going to put it on this piece, but I want to stay towards the end. Okay? And then I'm just going to fold this back on top of it and press it down. That gives us our double Z fold. If you look at from the top, you can see the double Z fold. That's as easy as it can get, right? Okay. Now, if you're like me, this might be the most challenging part of this card, and it's especially challenging for me when I'm doing it on video, but we're going to tie a bow to put on the middle. If you got the kit, you would have received a piece of this, I don't know if it's baker's twine or what it is, but it's white and blue with some silver, and we're just going to tie a little bow. I always struggle with tying bows anyway, but especially when I'm trying to do it on camera for some reason. But I feel like if I tied it ahead of time, you know, sometimes it's easy to think other people don't have anything that they struggle with. And so you feel like because you struggle that everyone else does better than you. And we all have areas that we struggle in our card making. There's always things that somebody else does better. So I'm just going to, and you can see me struggling. And I have found these nails aren't good for bow tying either. So I'm going to try this again. 3rd time's a charm. I haven't been counting. Is this only the 3rd time? It could be more. Okay, I think I got it. And then I'm just going to hold it in the middle while I pull my loops to try to get them even. And then I just keep making it a little bit smaller, tightening it up making a little bit smaller, just holding the knot until I get it the size that I want. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to bring in my scissors. And I'm just going to cut the tails. Okay. And then to attach that, I'm just going to use a little bit of liquid glue. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the back. And I'm going to put it right in this area where the two larger leaves come together. And I'm just going to hold my finger down on that for a moment so it can set up a little bit. So while I'm talking, I'm just going to hold that steady for a moment. And then the only thing that we have left to do is to add our rhinestones. So once we do that, our card will be finished. Again, I do want to remind you to check out the announcement. If you're looking at the page or the group, Karen's Cards and More Facebook group or page, at the top is the June projects. So definitely take a look at that and see if that's something that you want to do. So then I'm going to use these gemstones, and I used 2 of the larger ones and 1 of the smaller one. You could do it however you wanted. And let me see, I'm going to use the lighter ones. You could use the darker ones. This came, if you ordered the Hydrangea Hill Suite, this came with that, I believe. Maybe not, maybe I ordered them separately. But if you got the kit, they were definitely, I made sure that they were in your kit, so you would have had these. So I'm just using 3, and I'm putting those randomly around. Let me move all this out of the way. And there we have our card, our double Z fold. And it's finished. So I hope that you'll join me again. Reminder that next week we will not be having Facebook Live because it's Memorial Day. So then we will be back the first Monday in June. Check out my Facebook group and page. Also check out my YouTube channel and see the other videos that I have out there. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's crafting session, and we'll craft together again soon.